What's up everyone, it's Skill Up here with another Division video. I hope you're having a fantastic week. The developers have just announced that they're going to be making some big changes to the PTS on week 3, so I wanted to take you through those changes and what they meant, so let's get stuck straight into the detail. First of all, they're removing the reloading while sprinting restriction that they implemented on week 2 of the PTS. Now, as you guys know, I'm all in favor of this change, as in I'm a big believer that slowing down combat during that reload window was really important, and I thought it performed extremely well on the PTS. It definitely pushed people into cover, and it did result in a better flow of gameplay, but that was my perspective, and many people disagreed, so we absolutely have to recognize that. Massive certainly did, and they feel like they need to respond to that. They felt like it felt like too much of a transition, particularly in a PvE space, and so they're going to be reverting the change. So fair enough. As I said, I don't agree. I think this is the wrong move. However, absolutely have to recognize the view of others that really did not like this change and would have liked to have seen it stay the same. And furthermore, I guess we have to trust Massive on this one and hope that they have a better read on what the game really needs than we do in this instance, and just back their judgment. Next up is gear normalization. Now, for those of you that don't know, the way this works is that when you step into the last stand game mode, all of your stats are maxed out. And that's really good because it makes it more competitive. It's you're less reliant upon RNG rolls and more reliant upon actual skill. However, the problem with this was that the way they did it wasn't quite perfect. In particular, they maxed out your armor to 70%, which means that assault rifles became a bit of a must pick there, given the fact that they did enemy armor damage, and that enemy armor damage was just too valuable in that context. They also said that they're going to be making some changes to the way they normalize your major stat bonuses on your gear, and they're going to let those stay as they are rather than normalize them, which is kind of interesting. And then after that, they went on to say they're going to make some big changes to the emerging skill power meta. Firstly, they said that they really want skills to be doing less damage overall, so we can definitely expect to see some tweaks on the PvP skill modifier, because basically there's a specific modifier that affects PvP skill damage. They also said that cooldowns are also going to be on the chopping block. Right now, when you stack up lots of skill power, it increases both the power of the ability, and it also increases, or decreases I should say, the cooldown, so it's usable more often. They're going to be changing that so that you need to spec into actual skill haste a lot more, and you get less base skill cooldown when you stack lots of skill power. They also are going to be making some changes to the support station. Now, this thing has become very popular in PvP. It's always been fairly popular, but now that everyone's doing a lot more PvP in Last Stand, you're really seeing this sort of have a very large impact on PvP encounters. What they did before was they actually shrunk the range of the support station, which seems like a good idea because it kind of balanced it, but what it actually made people do was just sort of move around in a smaller circle, which wasn't particularly fun. So they're increasing the range of it, but what they're doing is that they're making it so you can't stack multiple support stations on top of each other to get bonus heals from them. They're also going to be reducing the amount of healing that comes from that support station, so we can definitely expect this ability to feel quite different in the next version of the PTS. Massive also highlighted that it was very difficult to counter certain skill objects such as support stations, seeker mines, and turrets. They said that basically they're going to make it so that, you know, your disruptor sticky bomb will detonate on impact, so it's going to basically, you know, make it easier to sort of counter those. And they also highlighted that they're going to be more vulnerable to elemental damage such as explosions and fire, which I'm assuming meaning they're going to take more damage from grenades. The dreaded seeker mines, which were completely ubiquitous in week 2 of the PTS, they are definitely being tuned down. They're an absolute pain in the ass right now. It's all anyone is running. It's because what they do is that they do a fair amount of damage when you stack skill power. They basically stagger you as well, and they also put a bleed on you, which slows you down. That's a huge amount of utility, especially for an ability that actually doesn't require any smart targeting at all. You literally just double tap a button and it automatically acquires the target. And the next version of the PTS, you're going to see that cluster mines are no longer going to sort of stagger your enemy, right? So they're just going to explode, and that's that. There's also going to be a longer cooldown for them, and the damage is going to shift out. So rather than doing lots of base damage at the beginning and then the bleed effect applying, you know, a small amount of damage, they're going to spread it out. So the base explosion provides less upfront damage and it provides more damage through the bleed, which is good because if you're stacking lots of bleed resistance, it means that you're going to be basically taking less damage there as well. Turret is also getting hit. When you stacked enough skill power, this thing had like 1 billion HP. It was practically impossible to kill, very hard to counter. So they're essentially reducing its health, bringing it down to something much more reasonable, which I think is very fair indeed. The mighty Historian, the marksman rifle that really defined the first 2 weeks of the PTS, has taken a huge hit, or at least a change. Long story short, everyone was stacking skill power and they were all running the Historian because, yeah, you basically got your heals back really fast. You can sit in a buff smart cover if you like, and the Historian, because it's scaled from skill power, still dealt ridiculous weapon damage. You could get like bonus 40k per bullet just by firing body shots. That is no longer going to happen because this weapon will now actually scale with your firearms. They didn't exactly say how it will scale, but there it is. I think it's a good change in the sense that something needed to happen, but I'm also a bit disappointed that this does leave a void now for skill power users who are looking for a damage focused weapon. All of the other weapons in the game are firearms focused. This was the one weapon that we could use that was really great for skill power users, so it's a little bit sad to see that it's gone down that firearms path as well. The Caduceus was a weapon that I think a lot of people weren't really using yet because they probably weren't doing a lot of PvE content. Most people are pretty focused on PvP on the PTS. I have been using it a lot, and I can tell you this thing is absurdly strong, especially if you're in a stacked firearms build and you've got a fair amount of crit on yourself, a buffed pulse, some crit mods on the weapon. You get a huge amount of healing back for this, and guess what? It actually stacks. So if you've got 4 people in your party all firing this thing away, that is a lot of healing throughput. That is going to change now. This weapon will actually scale with your skill power, which means that firearms people are going to find this fairly useless, whereas if you've got a stacked skill power build, this weapon is for you. And secondly, you are not going to be able to stack it on top of other players. Now it basically just means that you know, only one heal effect can be active, or one Caduceus heal effect can be active at a time to reduce that Caduceus stacking. One of the more surprising changes, at least from my perspective, is that we're all going to be getting a little bit more health. They made some changes to the way that base health is calculated on the PTS, and essentially we were going to be given about 80k free health at World Tier 5. The developers obviously felt like this wasn't enough, and they're going to be increasing that by 37%, so we're going to have even more health at our disposal when we log in. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's happened, to be honest with you. Having done some PvE content, I generally found it fairly well tuned from a damage perspective, so it's interesting to see what sort of led to this decision. Medkits are getting a change. They used to have a much shorter cooldown back in the day, but that was increased for PvP reasons. Looking at all the changes that they've made to PvP, in particular, I suppose, to the low amount of base healing that you're getting if you're not stacking skill power, they're now going to be shortening the medkit cooldown timer, meaning you're going to be able to use your medkit more often. The new Seeker gear set that people may have tried out, maybe not, it's gone, sadly. They went through a version 1, which was kind of ridiculously overpowered and kind of stupid. Version 2 was okay, but it was a little bit undertuned. It was basically like hit 2 shots to the body, 1 shot to the head, except the tuning of that wasn't particularly great, and it wasn't a particularly fun set to use either. So they're basically putting it back on the shelf. They're going to come and have a swing at it later on. It will not be released in patch 1.6. And finally, those of you frustrated with the no checkpoints in legendary difficulty, rejoice, there is going to be 1 checkpoint added. So to be clear, currently on legendary difficulty, if you died, no matter if you were the last boss, you wiped and you were done. You basically had to restart the mission all over again. That wasn't particularly fun if you'd spent 45 minutes clearing Warren Gate nice and slowly. So this change here is going to basically put a checkpoint at about the midpoint of the mission, meaning that you're going to at least have a starting point for wanting to go back, but it still keeps that difficulty level quite high. And that's it, guys. Those are the changes we can expect. There are patch notes coming soon for this. The PTS is not yet live, but it will be soon, and I imagine when it goes live, that's when we'll see the patch notes. If there's more detail on that I'll need to report back, I'll certainly do so. Otherwise, I'll just leave this video up as the record of what's coming. PTS Week 3 is happening very soon. I don't know if there will be a PTS Week 4. I guess it all depends on how successful these changes are. So if you're on PC and you can get in there, don't don't forget to do so. Check it out. The other thing is, don't forget the Ghost Recon's Wildland beta is on this weekend. If you got into that, make sure you download the client and check it out because it's looking pretty damn nice. And if you haven't played Rainbow Six Siege, by the way, go and play that game because that's my go-to PvP game, and it's actually free at the moment because it's just free. I don't know, they just do a free weekend for whatever reason. Do yourself a favor. If you haven't played Siege, go and play Siege. It's amazing. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, drop it a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.